Welcome to Talking It Out. I'm Jonathan Geffner, and my special guest today is Joe Gandelman. Joe is a very popular and busy ventriloquist based in California, San Diego, California, in fact, very well known and very well respected throughout the ventriloquist community. Welcome, Joe.
Well, nice to be here. Nice to be anywhere.
I don't think we actually talked directly because we've seen each other, I've crossed paths a lot over the years, but it's nice to finally get to talk to you and let everybody join in listening to learn more about you and about your cat.
Yeah, technical difficulty. Excuse me. Excuse me.
What's your cat's name?
That's Smokey, one of three.
Smokey. Okay, well, obviously loves the limelight.
I may have a tail in my face while we're talking, but keep going.
You may have three tails in your face before we're done, right? What was your path to becoming a ventriloquist?
Well, it's an unusual path. Originally, I was a journalist. I wanted to be an actor, and very, very badly. And I was into all these theater productions at Amity Regional High School. In fact, there's a guy who became very famous in the theater. If you saw Ghostbusters with the guy with the red hair who lets the ghost go.
Okay. I don't think I ever saw Ghostbusters. I'm probably the only one who never saw it.
Die Hard with a Vengeance and Die Hard. He became a character actor by the name of William Atherton. His real name was Bill Knight. He was in my theater group. And I got some really good roles, and I wanted to be an actor. And everybody said I should be an actor. And I like comedy and acting, really serious about acting. And at the last minute, my parents talked me out of it. And they said, "Oh no, you got to have something to fall back on when you failed." I don't think they meant it that way.
Yeah.
Very short. I went to Colgate. I became a political science major. I got involved with journalism. I went over my last semester in India and Colgate independent study in India. I interned at a newspaper. I came back and got my master's in journalism from the Middle School of Journalism. And I went back to India and freelanced from India, Spain, and Bangladesh, and did stuff for national NPR, some freelance for Newsweek, Christians, you name it. And then I came back and worked on the Wichita Eagle Beacon, and then also the San Diego Union brought me out because I spoke Spanish. In 1990, there was so much stress on the newspaper. I decided I would do a little bit of, in 1889, I would get a little ventriloquist dummy that I had tinkered with before. And I wrote to Paul Winchell as an autograph collector. Where do I get a dummy? I've looked at the toy stores. He said, it's on my wall, actually, the plaque on there. Forget toy stores. Go to a magic shop. Magicians are vents and vents are magicians. I got a figure. It was bigger than me. He's been downsized because I'm 5'1". And I did that. But then I read about Jimmy Nelson, and I was going to go down to Florida, and I discovered he was there. So I wrote to him. He invited me to visit him. So I guess it was 1988 first time. Yeah, 88. And I went down to Florida, and I met Jimmy Nelson.
Now, let me just interrupt for a moment for those of our viewers who are not ventriloquists, might be just tuning in and don't really follow ventriloquism normally. Jimmy Nelson was a very famous ventriloquist, as was Paul Winchell. So these were two of the icons in the industry who you mentioned so far.
And Jimmy was working at a bank. I guess he had a huge number of children. They made him an assistant vice president of communications. He did commercials initially with his puppets and without. And he met me and he said, "Send me some videotapes." So he was looking at my videotapes and critiquing them by mail. And then every time I go down to see my parents in Florida, I'd visit Jimmy. And first time I was at the convention was 1989. He was there, and I did my first open mic. But Jimmy's the one who encouraged me to go full time. He said, "You're smiling. You seem so much at ease doing it. You could do this full time." And he kept critiquing me. And because of Jimmy Nelson, I tell people he is to blame for me doing ventriloquism. But Jimmy was the one. And even after that, I talked to him every month. I visited him in time. So Jimmy was a real authentic mentor, real strong mentor.
What a nice story, and not surprising from the little I know personally of Jimmy Nelson. I talked with him a few times at the conventions. I went to these ventriloquist conventions called vent conventions, for those of you not in the business. And I went to a number of them early in my career, but I haven't been there for a number of years. Anyway, back then, I did talk to him a few times. He always struck me as a particularly nice person. I've only heard nice things about him ever. Well, everybody loved him.
You and I know that sometimes what you see on TV or the screen about somebody who's famous may not be how they are when you actually talk to them. Or
that's why I pointed out about him in particular, sort of being in the know there amongst the ventriloquists who knew him very well, and people only have nice stories about him. I've never heard an unkind word about him.
And the thing about him with me was he was exactly the same as he was on the screen. And I always tell everybody, including I did a couple of 3 shows yesterday in Riverside, California for camps. I told the kids, look up Jimmy Nelson on YouTube. and you're going to see his things. He's exactly the way he was on TV. He's very, very
Mm.
sweet, very
Yeah.
positive person, really
Yes.
positive.
That's
And so
another
that's
thing
why
that you mentioned too. It's not only that he was a genuinely nice person, very giving and generous type of person, but also the same personality. He didn't really have a different stage persona.
that's
He
right.
really
That's right.
he
That
had
was
a
him.
lovely,
Yeah,
sweet stage persona, and that's how he was in
that's
person
how he
too.
was. That's how he
Yeah.
was. And so in 1990, with having nothing lined up, I quit the San Diego Union newspaper. And of course, I tell people when I do my show, I worked on newspapers. I used to work for dummies. Now they work for me.
So now you mentioned being overseas all the way in India, and did you say
I was in India.
Pakistan?
Well, I
And
went to India, but I did visit Bangladesh for a couple of weeks. I
uh,
did stories from there. Then I went. I actually went by through the Khyber Pass with an Iranian diplomat. It was shot once the Shah got out of power. But
well,
we went to India, Bangladesh, Afghanistan. We slept in a little tiny hotel that was like a dirt hut,
uh,
and then because he wanted to make it all the way up there in one drive. And then then he invited me to Iran, and I did a story from Greece, from Cyprus. But then I settled in Spain and I was actually the official special correspondent of the Christian Science Monitor. And people would laugh because, here's Joe Gandelman, who's Jewish, writing for the Christian Science Monitor in a rented apartment with a big crucifix over my bed.
so how did the Christian Science Monitor wind up hiring you for that position? Or just
I wasn't
you?
quite hired. I was what they call them stringers. You paid per
Oh,
piece.
all right,
But
yeah.
I was like a super stringer, so they actually gave me a title that they gave very few people,
Hmm.
special correspondent of the Christian Science Monitor. And they never
Uh-huh.
ever sent anybody into Spain during all that time because I was there when Franco died. They never sent anybody into Spain at all
Hmm.
because I just did all their stories from Spain.
How many years altogether were you overseas?
Well, I think it was, if I added it up, probably the first time I went, probably about 5.5 years overseas.
Hmm. But you did a lot of traveling in those five and a
A
half
lot of
years,
traveling,
apparently.
a lot of traveling, yeah.
Yeah. Did you have a favorite place to be, country or city or area? Uh,
I liked India, but I really like Spain.
hmm.
I absolutely love Spain. I love the Spaniards. That was my favorite place.
Have you been back since you
No,
returned?
actually, haven't been anywhere over. The most I've done is I mean, being in San Diego, writing on the paper. I've been to Mexico a couple of times, but I mean, I haven't been anywhere. And I love Spain.
You're fluent in Spanish.
Very fluent in Spanish. I've lost some of it. Like I have some jokes
Yeah.
that I did yesterday for a
Huh.
kid in Spanish. The dummy says, I said, "What's your name in Spanish?" He says, "Senor sabe lo todo," which means Mr. Know It All. And I said, "What's my name in Spanish?" Then he says, "Senor sabe lo nada." And I said, "What does nada mean?" Which means nothing.
Yeah.
You know, he said, "Nada means friend." I said, "They're going to see me and know them a big nada." And of course, the Latino kids were just roaring. And
Mhm.
and I said, "My mother said it was nada." He says, "She knows." So, and I can do Spanish. I still can conduct a conversation in Spanish, but in those days, I could interview. I interviewed somebody who became the prime minister of Spain later. A total interview. All my interviews were in Spanish, and I perfectly translated
Oh,
them.
well, so
I
you
did
do
like
still
10.
perform in Spanish for Spanish speaking audiences?
If I know it's a Spanish speaking audience, I put a couple things in with Spanish. Like when I do La Bamba, it's really La Bamba because I know it really
Mm.
well and I know and I pronounce the words correctly.
Mm.
But I tried doing a whole show in Spanish. I haven't done that in many, many, many years.
Where do you usually perform? What kind of venues?
Oh, I perform, you name it. Jimmy Nelson had told me don't turn down performing, and that's sort of what I've done. If a seniors facility wants me, I do a seniors facility. If a school wants me, I do a school. I do fairs. I did like 4 fairs last year and one festival. I did a festival in Texas this year, a fair in Arizona. Then I have the end of July, I got a fair in California, Oregon, South Dakota, and maybe one more. So I just, I do a lot of shows for the Jewish community. And my way of tithing is I keep the rate because I get a lot of Chabads that call me, and I keep the rate my lowest rate is the Chabads when they call me. So
Mm.
I know all the people in the Chabads throughout, and of course they always come over and say, "Do you want a prayer?" I said, "I trust me. If you've seen my show, I need all the prayers I can get." So I have to.
For those who don't know Chabad, you want to
You can
tell?
explain it better than I can.
Well, it's Orthodox Jewish, Hasidic Jewish specifically group, which is also an acronym for the Lubavitch movement. They're also called Lubavitch Hasidim or Chabad as the
And I
organization.
really love doing stuff for them because they're so much into family, and their whole thing is charisma, and the rabbis have such charisma. And so I've gone there actually for was it 2 years ago for Passover at one of the Chabad's that I've gone. In fact, the person who's a rabbi now, he saw my show when he was a kid. So I've been doing it for like 32 years full time this November. And whenever the Chabads call, whenever they want, I'm there. And I never charge them my regular rate. So it's always a lower rate.
Well, that's nice. They do a lot of outreach for the
Huh?
they do outreach to the Jewish community as opposed to any other. They're unique that way. Most Hasidic
And
groups
also,
keep to themselves.
I must admit, I have some unusual shows. On Friday, I did a show at a nudist colony. And that was my fourth time over the years doing a show at the nudist
But
colony.
not nudist Hasidic Jews.
No.
Not yet, right? Yeah, that's not the type of outreach that the Chabad does.
No,
So let's take a look.
The nudist colony is not encouraged.
Right. Yeah, I would think not. So let's take a look at some excerpts, some video clips that we have of you, Joe Gandelman, performing.
But you're too short to see over the steering wheel. So are you. He can't stick out his tongue. And you know, if he could, he wouldn't. I gotta tell the parents something. He would not stick out his tongue if he could. You know why? There's a lot of respect in this relationship. And I only hope you have the same respect from your kids at home, and I'm sure you do.
I got a girlfriend. Really? Is she also New York pizza? She's Chicago. She has a lot of dough.
You might try to eat me.
I wouldn't eat you.
Really?
Too much fat.
I'm on a diet. All right, now you promise you're not gonna bite me.
No, get it out.
He's got something in here. Let's see what he's got in here.
A clown wig. You ate a clown? I knew it tasted funny.
Look at my face. Who do I look like?
Elmer Fudd.
Elmer Fudd doesn't have hair. I've got hair. With my hair, what movie star do I look like?
Here's Joe on NBC's Spy TV.
What is it?
TikTok.
I bet I have something you'd like to see. You are not going to believe this.
What is that?
There we go. How you doing? Good. Hello there. Hey. You like funny faces? Can you do this? Well, you know, Sixto, I want to...
Joe, Curly's ready for you.
Oh, okay. You sit down exactly like that. Be nice. And just take care of John, okay? Okay, let's go in. Hey, kid.
Yeah.
How you doing, Sixto?
Good.
You want to be my friend?
Yeah.
Great. You know that guy Joe I was with?
Yeah.
I don't like him.
Why?
Not nice to me.
What does he do?
Well, you see the big trunk that he took me out of?
Yeah.
He puts me in the trunk. I gotta sleep in that thing.
But you're a toy.
Nah.
Listen.
Who would that be?
Pretend like you're quiet.
Okay. Hi. I think I'm gonna put him back in his box. Stick him in the box. Kid, look. I'm a dummy. I'm in a box. You gotta help me. Before you go to the bathroom, get me out of the box.
You want me to do your thing?
Yes.
Good.
Are you okay? You want to go to the bathroom?
Yeah.
Come on, let's go for you. Because I have to hurry up.
Before you go to the bathroom, get me out of the box. You gotta help me. Hey, you can't do that. Wait, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't. I can't do this. No. I guess and I especially can't do this. You especially can't do it. Hey. Do you need a diaper change? No, you do. No, I don't. What do you put in your cake? Crickets and worms. I think I had that at a restaurant in Oceanside last night. Whoa! What's wrong? I gotta go. What? I got company. Let's see what you know. More than you. I don't have to stand here and be insulted. Then just go home.
Uncle Sidney! Don't have to shout.
Do you want some baby food?
No.
What do you want?
Carne asada.
No. What? What do you want?
The keys to your car.
That was Joe Gandelman performing, as he does in many different venues, as you were just saying a few moments ago. Do you have a preference, adults or kids or family audiences?
It's interesting. I love doing family audiences. And the ones I did, I've actually been hired. I was even hired a couple of times. I don't normally do preschools, but Head Start has hired me to do a whole bunch of shows. It's 4 to 5. Usually, a couple of years before COVID, it was 4 to 5 shows. up here in San Diego County 3 times a year. Now it's 4 shows this year. The little tiny kids, but I've adjusted that kind of show to that age group. And yesterday, of course, I had kindergarten through 6th grade. I think a little 7th grade, and those are 3 camps for the city of Riverside. I like the kids, and the kids are all into it. They almost get hyper during my show because the elephant puppet squirts them, and they wear a mask, all this type of stuff. But I like doing the adult audiences. In fact, the show I did at the nudist colony was, I thought, the best show I've done in 32 years. But of course, the contract says no photographs for obvious reasons. It's a cold night, so most of them were dressed. And if somebody doing your show and you look straight ahead and there's a guy totally nude going through the buffet line. I mean, that was sort of a shock, but it was more like a normal, it was like 170 people in that audience. But I like doing the shows for the adults. But I'd say 85 to 90% of what I get calls for are family and kids shows.
As far as adult shows, do you prefer the clothed or unclothed adult audiences?
I think I've done the nudist audiences totally unclothed. And, I'll tell you one thing, Jonathan. Nobody you'd like to see at a nudist colony is at a nudist colony. God, our Lord created clothes for a reason. The body is not beautiful. So I was much happier seeing them with clothing, yes.
Okay, and I bet you were diplomatic in not mentioning that to that particular audience. I would much prefer if you guys were clothed at the moment. So you mentioned Jimmy Nelson, of course, as being your biggest inspiration and personal guide and help in getting your career going. Any other influences in the actual development of your art? The
development, of course, most of these people are gone. One was Clinton Detweiler, who ran the Mayor Studios. The other was the late Colonel Bill Bowley, a magician. These people I called all the time that were very huge helps. You met Al Gettler.
Oh, I know him quite well.
Al Gettler, I've known Al, and Al has to be one of the most wonderful people. He's one of my dearest friends, and was always encouraging to me, always. And I tell you now, the current one of the people two people that I really like now that I've met is Jay Johnson and Ron Lucas. Very, very, very just wonderful, wonderful people, extremely encouraging. So, but I'd say those are the 3 main influences were Jimmy Nelson, Clinton Detweiler, Bill Bowley, and was there one Al Gettler, and I guess the guy who made my dummies, Chuck Jackson. He was always very, very encouraging.
Oh, right, yeah. I don't think I ever met him, but of course I've heard about him.
He retired, so he's totally out of the business.
Oh, I see. Yeah, but the others are no surprises that those were influences to you as well. Big names in the ventriloquist world, all the people you mentioned. So what kind of puppets do you have? I mean, people got a glimpse in the video clips we just saw, but do you prefer soft versus hard?
I really like the hard figures. I like both for different reasons. I like the hard figures. My favorite figure is the main character, John, and I think he's the one featured in those clips that you saw that they show. I think that's that John. And there's 2. There's John 1 was turned into a girl. Scott and Lisa Land did a sex change operation on him. So
he's ahead of his times, right? That's very, very popular these days.
And then John 2 is the one I use. He has really big eyes, and Chuck Jackson said he put the eyes in made by the guy who made the eyes for Chucky. They're oversized human eyes, big glass eyes. And he's being fixed right now. And then John 3 is the one I'm using right now and that I've used the other day. And there really is some difference between them. And then as far as soft puppets, I've used a lot of puppets. I like Landon Harvey's puppets very much, but my favorite soft puppet out of all of them is the Axtell Bulldog. I love Axtell puppets. I just have a natural feel with the latex.
Yeah.
And somebody said, how many puppets do you have? So if I add all the puppets I have, like back here, there's a ton of puppets. Wait, because I moved my screen away from here. Somebody said, how many do you have? So add all my puppets that need to be repaired, backup puppets. I have probably a total of about 37 puppets in total. I have, I think, 6 Jackson figures, wooden Jackson figures, and Conrad Hart's wooden head in the boxes, one of which is the only one he made because it has side-to-side eye movement. So I have a lot of puppets.
That's your version of Senor Wences, right? Because that was his thing, head in the box.
Head in the box. And when I do a show, I originally started using a couple of characters, but I like using a ton of characters. So I keep bringing these characters out during the show. And when I'm doing a show, if I don't like the way somebody's going or want to change it for the audience, I bring a different one out. So it's like I'm moving in when I do a show, actually.
Well, when you do so many puppets in one show, my guess is they're mostly soft puppets, right? Because those hard puppets are very cumbersome and heavier to move around. They have to be padded, and so that's one of
Usually
the
I-
drawbacks of the hard figures, right?
Yeah, originally I did a show and I brought like four figures with me. That was a little too much. So I bring one character. Sometimes I bring a second character with me. And like the one for the nudist colony, I brought John, the one with the long nose, which was Chuck Jackson's sort of updated version of Mortimer Snurd, but with no buck teeth or anything like that.
Mhm.
And the Jackson character that was the original one that I told you about. He's dressed in an army costume and he's under repairs right now also. So a minor repair. So, but I have like 37. So when I do a show, somebody, Steve Axtell laughed when somebody, I guess we were online or something. Somebody said, "How many puppets do you take to a show?" I said, "Well, I load up my car and I just go because I don't really count. Just figure out put all these puppets in my
As
car.
many as can fit, right?
Many as can fit. I have a van, yes.
So I'm glad you're not tempted to get a huge truck, because then you would never see the end of how many
never
puppets.
see the
You
end of
keep
it,
stuffing it, right?
Yeah.
Well, your audience would enjoy that, but it would be cumbersome for you. What kind of influences do you have aside from Ventriloquist, or just as far as comedy goes? Do you have
Oh, wow.
favorite comedians?
Well,
or-
I'm a bit of a traditionalist on this. First of all, I love watching silent movies, this old silent comedies.
Oh,
and silent
really?
movies. Yeah. And if I say, I always absolutely adored, and I still do, Laurel and Hardy, that I think we're about the greatest team ever. I must say, I'm a huge Three Stooges fan. And when I was a journalist, I actually got permission to cover the Three Stooges getting a star on Hollywood Boulevard. So I met
Oh, really?
Moe's daughter. And there were no Stooges who were able to go. Joe DeRita was by then blind. He couldn't attend, but his wife was there. And I met Joe Besser, who was Stinky on there was an Abbott and Costello show. He was the last Stooge, the most unloved, second last Stooge, the most unloved Stooge. And I met him. So I like the Three Stooges. I've actually gone back and looked at all the Columbia shorts. I love Abbott and Costello, but I only like Abbott and Costello's TV show. I thought the movies I don't watch as much, but I love the 2 seasons they did, the TV show.
Yeah, I remember that. I saw some episodes. Yeah.
And some contemporary comedians. I like Benny Hill from England very, very much. I must say, I love Seinfeld. I love Curb Your Enthusiasm with Larry David.
Yeah, me too.
And I have to start watching Veep as well, because I understand that's also very, very good.
No, I haven't seen that. But Curb Your Enthusiasm, I became a big fan of that just a couple of years ago. I hadn't watched it, then I started catching up on it. I checked out, and that's really, really grabbed me, that whole series. And then that led me to check out Seinfeld. I had never watched Seinfeld.
Yes.
Except for maybe one episode didn't really catch it. But I've been binging the whole series now. I almost finished now watching the whole series, and liked it quite a bit. I like Curb Your Enthusiasm even more, but it's nice to see where it came from, where it developed from. The sort of ground zero was Seinfeld.
It's interesting, when I was a kid, as far as influences of ventriloquism, of course, some of your viewers who aren't baby boomers, which I suspect are many who are not, they may not know all these names, but I adore Jimmy Nelson. He did the Nestle's Quick commercials. You know why?
Yeah.
Because Jimmy was natural looking and he didn't smile every time the puppet talked. And I could not stand Sherry Lewis. Now, I know Sherry Lewis's daughter is going to be doing an honorary thing for Sherry Lewis. The reason I like Sherry Lewis is because every time in her early years, not so much in her later years, every single time the puppet talks, she has a smile like this. And I love Paul Winchell. I loved his comedy. I love Jerry. I adored Jerry Mahoney. But again, that smile, every single jingle bell, it killed me. And I couldn't stand watching it. And also Sherry Lewis, I think, took the time slot at one point that was a slot by Howdy Doody. Maybe it's true, but I was in my mind.
So you never forgave her for that, huh? That you took away your Howdy Doody.
I thought as a kid that she killed Howdy Doody.
Yeah.
And Howdy Doody.
It's a capital offense.
The capital offense.
Yeah.
But I mean, those are the ones that I really liked as a kid. And but I didn't even like that many ventriloquists as a kid. I mean, actually, those are the only ones I really like to watch.
Yeah.
And I tell you, I like Pete Michaels, who passed away, who was at many of the conventions.
I remember him.
He's one of my favorite ones. But comedy, I watch lots of comedy, but I especially like the comedy teams.
Vintage comedy, and you said in particular the
silent. I like watching the sight gags and what they did with them. And I must say, I liked Harold Lloyd more than Charlie Chaplin.
Oh, really?
What
about Harold Lloyd? Did you like more than Charlie
Chaplin? And just, I like Chaplin, but Harold Lloyd was a little more. I don't know. I related a little more to him. And what's the other one to tell you? Even
Harry Langdon.
I love Harry Langdon. Yes.
Yeah, these guys are very obscure to most people now.
I guess they might
even
know
Chaplin. Most people don't know. So young people don't know much anymore. But But Chaplin was much more famous than the
I
others.
don't relate to a lot of the current comedians. Not that I'm a prude, but I just think I'm sort of the old school. I mean, I did a thing when I started where people said, you got to get into comedy clubs. All right. You got to be X-rated to be in comedy clubs. All right. So I actually couldn't write that stuff myself. I hired a writer and I did it a couple times. I didn't feel that was me. I couldn't do it. So I stopped doing it. It was very short lived. But when I watched comedy, John Pinette, who passed away, the really heavy comedian,
Yes, I remember
he
him.
was my favorite out of all of them. And
Why is that? What about him?
I thought he was just his timing was great. He had a sweetness about him. When I came to San Diego, I took my parents to the comedy club here in San Diego. We saw a young comedian, and my father said he's going to go somewhere. We adored him, Louis Anderson.
Oh, yes.
He
You
was
like the
great.
big guys, big comedians.
Big
you
guy.
know,
Yeah, I
big
saw
guys.
like the fat comedians. Yeah,
Fat comedians. Yeah.
those are the ones I tend to like more. Whereas if somebody's just doing a lot of X-rated jokes or sex jokes, it just doesn't hold my interest.
Yeah, and that's very much the style for most comedians these days.
Right.
What would you most like to do if you could, magic wand thing, just in your career, anything that would be particularly a special dream come true? Like, would you like to have a TV show? Would you like to have an ongoing theater performance of you presenting your work, in some kind of venue like that, or anything else produce?
I don't think I'd ever want to be in a place like Vegas. That atmosphere doesn't really feel good to me. I get nothing about it. Cruise ships are interesting, but I've been overseas for 5.5 years. Trust me, I love living in the United States. I don't mind going away for a bit, but I have no desire to go on a cruise ship with people that are eating all the time. And I mean, I wouldn't mind do a little bit of it, but I never really, I think at one point I tried to do it and it didn't really go anywhere, and I could have done some things, but I decided not to even apply anymore.
Yeah, some people love that. I know some performers, ventriloquists,
it.
and others and other comedians just love. They spend their lives pretty much on
Really
ships
like doing that.
as a
Yeah.
lifestyle. But you don't
It's a
see that as a
lifestyle.
lifestyle for yourself.
I like my house. I like my 3 cats. I like San Diego. I like my community. I'm a member of Rotary. I mean, I must say, I love doing the fairs and festivals. I love to be on a commercial or something and maybe do some acting, because originally I did have a very good agent. And if you look at my DVD, I was on a couple of TV shows. I was on, that was Spy TV, which is a hidden camera show, which was an incredible experience. I was also on a Vice thing. Oh, come on, I can't remember the name of the show. It was on Vice TV about these 2 African American guys that do experiences that are out of their experience level. So one day they did bullfighting. Another day they learned how to be a ventriloquist. I did that one. Another, so they sumo wrestling, right? And then I was on the Margaret Cho show, which is
Oh, yeah, I remember her.
the VH1 show.
Oh, yes.
And yeah, I was on that one, the beauty pageant show. And that was very interesting. And so, but I'd love to do
More of that.
I auditioned for a bunch of commercials and came close, but I never. And I also had auditioned for some TV shows. And one, I'm not going to get into all the details, but one I almost got, but a certain puppet I had that was made by somebody, I couldn't get an answer from their office about copyright, and they just went ahead and got somebody else.
Yeah.
They wanted me, and the agent was a little upset and said they really wanted you, but this whole thing left a bad taste in their mouth, so they got an actor and they had a puppet made. But I came so close. It was the Ghost Whisperer, I believe that was a show. I came close on being on. So I was going on a lot of these commercials. But it's hard to do commercials and auditions, because if you're in the way they work many times is you get a call from your agent, Joe, I've got an audition for you at 4:00 this afternoon. I can't just walk away from a paid show.
Yeah.
Right. Call back maybe, but you can't just walk away and say, oh, I've got to audition, because nothing may come of it. So I really couldn't get into that lifestyle that much, but I'd love to do commercials. I like doing fairs and festivals very much. I adore doing schools. I would like to do some things in comedy clubs, just for the heck of it. And I'm going to plan on doing that sometime this year. But come out as a comedian who's going to do a lot of stand-up jokes first, maybe about being a ventriloquist and not getting sick. My dummies have all the laughs, and then briefly bring a puppet out. So I'm thinking of doing something like that.
Well, I hope you can do more of those particular things you want to do more of. But meanwhile, you seem to do a nice variety of venues and types of shows. So you're bringing joy and laughter to all kinds of people, which it must be a gratifying thing to be able to do.
Well, I wonder how many kids are in therapy after watching my show.
Well, that too. You see, you're helping the therapist community as well. So on both ends, you're doing a service to society, I think. So I'll post your social media links underneath this video so people can stay in contact with you and follow you, subscribe to your channels and so forth. But maybe just verbally, you could mention now what's the best way for people to follow you.
Well, of course, the website is www.familyentertainer.com. I keep that updated to a certain extent. That's all the show. In my original, that video of me, preview video, that's on my website as well as on YouTube. And there's also 2 accounts, Joe Gandelman. That one we can't take down because somebody else put it up, but it's Joe Gandelman, comic ventriloquist Joe Gandelman and Friends, or Joe Gandelman and Friends. That's the one that has a lot of short video things from TikTok, other things I've done at home that has some videos I've actually done to be YouTube videos. YouTube's page needs a lot more on it. And of course, I've been just doing a lot of stuff on TikTok because I enjoy it so much.
Okay.
And,
well, we'll post those links so everybody can stay in touch and follow you and so forth. So thank you very much, Joe, for joining me here today for this very interesting conversation. And for all you viewers out there, if you enjoyed this interview today, and why wouldn't you, subscribe to this channel so that you will be up to date. Make sure to hit that notification bell so you'll be notified every time there's a new upload, because I've got a lot of fascinating guests lined up in this ongoing podcast series, talking it out, as well as loads of videos for you to enjoy here. The Casanoir movie, it's called Casanoir, my short movie, which has won to date 26 awards in international film festivals, is right here on my YouTube channel, the Trillo Suede YouTube channel, for the time being, free for you to enjoy. So don't miss it, as well as the Trillo Suede web series, 2 seasons of which are right here, also free for you to enjoy, and hundreds of other videos with my Trillo Suede characters, my main characters these days, as well as many other puppet characters. So check all that out. Subscribe now to the channel if you haven't, and subscribe to Joe and follow him in all his different venues. And once again, thank you, Joe, and thanks to all of you out there for joining us today. See you soon.